Today we are going to be looking at an app called Thumbjam. Thumbjam's a really great app for not just for playing music but also for recording music. You can use it for so many different things. It has so many multiple uses, and the great thing about Thumbjam is that you can change the notes to have the figure notes colours on them, so it works perfectly for us at Drake Music Scotland. So the first thing you should look at when you should see when you open Thumbjam on your iPad is a screen that looks like this, and mine's just set up to a cello with a chromatic scale. It looks like that, but there is sometimes a different screen that you look at and it'll be all of the figure notes colours. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get that screen up. So all you do is you press this little button down the bottom right that says preferences, and then you want to go into options, and so mine's down at the bottom, but that's the top. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, keep going, you'll see here it says use figure note symbols and use figure notes bar colours. So you can click them. So if you click the first one, you just get the notes and the shapes. And then if you click the second one, you get the colours on the full thing. So that's the first thing that we want to get set up today. The other thing I wanted to just warn you about, if you have a screen that doesn't look like that or doesn't look like the different colours, you might have a screen that looks like that and it's just blank and you can't really see anything until you touch it. So the way to get around that is, if it shows you that, go into your options again, and you want to click this button that says show note grid, and you want to make sure that's turned on. Perfect. And you should have a little screen like that to start the session with. Before we get into recording some samples and making our own instruments, let's have a quick explore on Thumbjam, because there's so much that it can do and it can be quite overwhelming. But let's just look at this little line across the top to start with, so I can kind of show you the basics that you might need for this video. So we'll start in the middle and work our way left. This first button here, it says oct, and then there's a minus and a plus. So all that does, if you press the plus one, it takes you higher. So I'm going to touch this high note at the note at the far right. You see that's quite high, and if I press the minus, it'll take it down, and keep pressing. So it's just, you press the plus sign to make it go higher and the minus sign to make it go lower. That's with what you're playing and what you see on your screen. The next button beside it says span, and then again there's a plus or a minus. So let's click the plus sign and see what happens. So our colours, they're getting smaller and smaller, and we're seeing more colours on our screen. So the span just means it gives you more notes to play. So let's take it right down. If we keep clicking the minus button, you'll get a screen that you can see the notes more up close, and then you might want to press the plus sign to get back to kind of the middle octave range. So there's just your 1 octave of figure notes, just like that. So that's those two. Let's look at this next one. The ARP we don't really need to look at. This little box here with is kind of 2 rectangles squished together. Let's press that and see what happens. So you come up with this little screen, and it gives you a couple of different options. So what this does is it splits the screen. So at the moment it's set to 1, and we've just got our 1 instrument. Let's see what happens if we put it to 2. So we've still got our cello that we just had, but it's now created a second instrument for us, and you can change that to a different instrument if you want. So just give that a tap, make sure it's on it, and then if you press this press this button here, double tap it, you can change or you can unload the instrument. So we'll change the instrument and we'll set it to something like we'll set it to like a blues organ or something like that, and then you just press done, and now you've got 2 screens with 2 different instruments on it. So that's what that screen does, but we'll keep it with our 1 just now, and we'll set it back to our cello. And then moving along again to the left, so we've just done the rectangle, let's have a look at this little blue line here. Kind of looks like a Z. So what this button does, there's 3 different options. If you click it, you get a kind of squinty Z or an S, and then you get a line. So the one that we want to have it set to for today is this little one with a step, and all this does is it changes the sound you make when you move your hand up and down the keys here. So let's have a listen to what it sounds like in the Z. Okay, so it's pretty steppy, so it basically just moves from one to the other, and you can hear that quite clearly. Let's move to the diagonal one. So this is kind of a little bit different. You can still move it by steps if you wanted to, if you take it slower, but if we go quite fast up and down, you can see it has a kind of slidey sound. So it's in between the last setting and the next setting that we'll look at, so it's kind of steppy and slidey. And then the last setting we'll look at is a screen that looks like this, and this one is very much a slidey noise, and it's quite cool, especially if you set it to a trombone. There's a lot of things you can do with this noise. You can make it sound quite sad, and we'll just click it again and take it back to our normal setting. So that's our little Z button. And now the button beside this, I don't know if you can see, but it's kind of like a piano pedal. So all it does is it sustains the note, it holds the note longer. So if we hold that and take our finger off, that note stops when we take our finger off there. So let's see if we press and hold this down and see what happens. So you see, if you're holding this little sustain button and you press a note and take your hand off, it'll keep going after you've removed your hand. So it allows you to make up chords and play lots of different notes at once. Now if you double click that, a new little bit of the screen comes up down here, and this one says sustain and this one says lock. So let's hold the sustain and see what happens. So it does the same as it does when you hold it up here. It sustains it, and then as soon as you take your hand off the sustain button, it stops the sustain. But this sustain lock is quite cool. Let's have a look and see what this does. So if we hold our sustain down, so if you hold your sustain and select the notes you want and then quickly press sustain lock, it holds down those notes and it leaves your hand free to do other melodies on top of it. The button that we really want today is this top left, and it's called sound. So if you click there, this is kind of the first thing you'll do whenever you open up Thumbjam if you want to play an instrument. The very first button says change instrument. So let's have a look at that. So you open that up and there's all these different instruments here that you can use. And a quick little note for you is these two buttons down here and what they do. So when you if these are unselected, so they're grey, what happens when you click on these instruments is it sets it up for you the way that figure notes is intended. So it gives you specific scales, but the way to keep that screen, so if you have selected your instrument and then you've gone to the hassle of setting up a specific scale or setting up specific colours that you see in front of you with your figure notes, and you don't want that to move, you want to keep what you see on your screen but you want a different instrument, just be sure to check these two down the bottom. So this one says keep scale and key, and then keep controls, and that'll keep all your settings the same and it'll just change your instrument. So I've got a nice minor blues, got my nice minor blues scale there, but I don't quite like the organ, so let's try something else. If I try it as, let's just go for a marimba. There we go. So different instrument, but the same notes that you're playing, it just sounds a bit different. So that's two to kind of keep an eye on. And that is the very basics of Thumbjam for playing and for instruments, and kind of for what you'll want to know for this video. So let's have a look at making our own instruments. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to sample a sound, and then it's going to change. So instead of hearing this marimba that's already set to the iPad, we're going to record our own sounds and use them as the basis for the notes that we're playing. So it's super easy. Go back into that sound button at the top left, and you're going to click that button that says create instrument. There we go, and you'll see a screen like that, and you can see as I'm talking it's picking it up. So it's quite sensitive. I'm just using the mic of the iPad, but you could plug in a mic if you really wanted to. It might give you more depth to your recording. You might be able to record quieter things and make them louder if you're using an external microphone, and you can hook it up to an interface. But for just recording in your class and at home or whatever, the iPad microphone or your iPhone microphone will be perfectly fine. So I'm just going to start with the one shot. So if you this button up here, this is pitched or one shot. If you just click the one shot, So there's two ways that you can record sound on this. There's the auto function, which is what this little button here is for, or there's the record function. So if I click I'm going to turn the auto off for now, and what happens if I click the record button? Let's see. I'm going to finish that. Perfect, so that's just recorded what I've played, what I've done with my claps. So to do that, all you do is you hit that big record button, you do whatever you need to, and then you press stop record and you finish. But if we listen again, so you'll hear at the start there's some kind of white noise, some outside noise, and that's just from the air. It's from me being in a space. It's from the electronics I've got set up at the moment, and that's all it is. So that's something to be wary of if you're using the record without the auto function on, is that it's going to pick that up at the start, so you might need to cut that out later. Let's try it with the auto button on. So what the auto button does is it will just pick up the sound you make. So as soon as you hit that record button, the minute you make a noise, it'll pick it up, and the minute the noise stops, it will stop. So I'll kind of show you an example. Let's see. See, there's no air at the start now because it's on auto. It's just picked up the noise that I've made rather than the air around me, because it's not set to specifically record. It's just waiting for a noise or a sound. So you've got a much cleaner note. The only issue with that is if you're trying to record a specific sound or something you want that's quite long, maybe something outside, is you might miss it because you're not in control of when you're recording. So you just kind of have to be wary of that. But that's the really basic way to record sounds. The two different options. Before we go any further, let's just have a look at saving our sounds that we've got so far, and then we can go look at editing them further. So this, in theory, should automatically save if you press this done button up the top, but that's kind of a random title, and I want to make sure that this is something I remember. So if you just click on that title there, and we'll get rid of that, and I'll call it something like clap. Clap 1, 2, 3. That's that, and then I'm going to click done. Perfect. So that's saved now. I've clearly not saved the name right because it's still coming up as unnamed, so I must have forgot to hit the enter button. But that's okay, you can go in and change it later. You've just got to remember what numbers are at the end is the easiest way to do it. Okay, so we've recorded one way. Let's have a look at recording other ways before we go and look back and edit that one. So it's the same thing again. You do your sound, create an instrument, and what we had last time was this grey. So instead of that, we're going to look at doing it in the pitched way. So if you click that one shot button, click the pitched button next to the one shot button, sorry, and it'll give you a screen that looks like that again instead. And you record exactly the same way. You can either press and go, or you can press your auto. For this, I'm just going to record without the auto one because I want to record something a bit longer. So let's see. So what happens when you record in your pitch is that your whatever sound you record, be it something percussion like a clapping like I've just done, or if you're recording another sound, it'll take it and it'll change the pitch. So that's my original recording, that's the note that it's assigned itself to. So if we go up, you can see it kind of sounds lower as we go towards the left, and it sounds a little bit higher as we go towards the right. So that's the kind of things it does, but it'll change every noise differently. My advice to you is, rather than record lots of different sounds on the same sample screen here, just keep creating instruments. So if you've done that by accident and you've recorded an extra sound and oh no, it's in my way, all you do is press this edit button down here, delete it. Easy peasy, there we go. And you've got your original sound. And then my advice to you would be to go and create another instrument with whatever sound you want, and save that as an instrument. And then you can use your split screen. Let's split it to 2. There we go, we've got one sound there. Let's change this one to something else that we recorded already. So my advice to you would be if you're recording using the one shot in the grey, you can probably record as many sounds as you want, but they're just going to play as the sounds as you record them in. You can use the pitch for percussive instruments or for any sounds really, and see what you can get from that. The pitch one is really cool because you kind of don't really know what's going to happen to the sound when you edit it, and if you play it high, what's going to happen, if you play it low, what's going to happen. And it's really cool that you can play that more as a figure noted instrument. But it does get messy if you're adding lots of instruments into the same, lots of sounds into the same instrument sample. So I would just keep them separate. Okay, so we've done that. What can we do now? How can we edit it? Let's have a look. I'm going to save this first of all. I've renamed that, it's saved and it's done. Now let's have a look at going back and editing those sounds. And you can do this with both if you've done a one shot, so a more percussive thing, or if you've done something pitched, you can change both of them and it'll kind of sound very similar. Let's have a look at the pitch stuff for now. To edit your sound, you just press this edit button down here. You're going to click the bottom button that says sample, and then you'll see this box come up, and you'll see at the top it says 1, 2, 3, sample set 1, 2, 3, and it's got kind of a little arrow. If you just click that, it'll open up this kind of drop down menu, and I want to just edit that sound slightly. So I've made that clapping sound, and if you press this I on the side, it'll take you back to that screen you know. So let's go and edit this further. Let's see what we can do. So if we click here, it'll take you to another screen that looks like this. Now there's a couple of things you can do from here. So this is kind of the place that you can crop your sound, as it were. So here you've got these top three kind of slidey buttons. This is start, loop start, and stop. So let's see what happens if I move the start all the way across here. Let's have a look. So the sound I made is already shorter. Let's see what happens if I take the stop at the end down as well. So the sound becomes much shorter because I've cut away the time at the end by using this stop, and I've cut away the time at the start by using this start as well. And you've just got to make sure if you're moving your start about that you move your loop start back with it as well. And that leads us nicely onto the next thing that we can do from this screen, which is that we can loop the sound so it's just constant. So let's click this loop button and let's click again, see what happens. There you go, so you can hear it just plays over and over again. Now there's some space in between mine there, so I'm going to try and get rid of that. There we go. And I've got rid of that the sound at the start and the end because I recorded it, rather than recorded it on auto, I press stop and I press start. So there was some space at the start and the end. So I've got rid of that now. So that's a way that you can do that. The other thing you can do from here is this button that says gain here. You can slide that all the way up and down. Gain essentially is volume. So at the moment mine sounds fine, I'm quite happy with it, but if I record something else and then it's maybe louder, I might want to move this gain up so that they're equal, or move it down so that they're equal. So those are what you can do from there. Let's go and look at some other things that we can do to edit this sound. So if we go back to that edit screen that we were just on, so to show you how to do that again, so you edit your sample, there's two buttons here. One says attack time and one says release time, and again these are slidey things. Let's see what happens if we bump up that release time first. There we go. So you can hear, because I've bumped up that release time, there's an echo almost. So that's kind of what the release button does. It's as an easy way of putting it. Your release button creates an echo of whatever you're playing. So let's press that note again, see what happens. So I've stopped playing now, but it's still going after I've lifted my finger off. So that's what the release button does. Let's have a look at the attack button, see what that does. So this is a little bit more subtle, but basically when you bump that attack all the way up, there's that slight delay from when you press the button to when you hear the sound, from when you press the screen to when you hear the sound. Okay, it's kind of almost got like a fade in kind of thing. So that's that. It's basically an echo and a fade in is what these two do. So that's something else that you could do to change the sound there. And then you can play these sounds however you like. So yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know for recording your instruments. So let's just do a quick recap of all of our buttons. So you've got your octave buttons up here, which change where the octave is. If you're using a split screen, make sure you tap whichever one you want to change first. So your octave that goes up and down, your span that gives you more notes or less notes, you've got your split screen button, you've got your slidey button, you've got your sustain, and then you've got your instrument button. And from there you can change your instruments and you can create instruments. And the other really thing to remember is that if you need to go back and edit a sound you've recorded, you edit, sample, and click whichever sample it is you need to edit. And there we go. That's that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you kind of a little bit of advice when you're recording your own sounds. Thumbjam's another great way of recording samples and things like that, same way that GarageBand does similar things, but with this I think you have a little bit more control, especially with the pitched option. You have a lot more control of to what your sounds sound like. So good luck, happy recording, happy music making, enjoy!